Milt, oh, Geopolitical George here. I'm at Katerina Square. And we're going to have a little lesson. I'm going to try again. I've already made a video on this, but it was awful. I've decided to redo it. I got to practice at this stuff. We're going to go through some basic principles of something you need to know about, I think. Eurasianism. It's the fourth political theory. It's to get us away from this left-right paradigm and have an ideology that actually protects tradition and families, various cultures. Well, let's just start, shall we? I'm going to read, if you don't mind. This book is old. It was written in 2005. It's just a primer, and it's very old material, but they haven't changed it. They've improved it. It is evolving. The original Eurasianism evolved during the immigration, just before the revolution. The main philosophers behind it, I'm not going to sit here and try to pronounce them. My Russian pronunciation is terrible, especially when it's spelt out in Latin letters. So I'll put it here so you can screenshot it. And note the last one, V.N. Ilyin. Putin, that's one of his heroes. He quotes him all the time and tells stories about him. He had his remains brought back to some place and interred in Russia. I guess he died outside of Russia. They were all emigres. They were all driven out by the Bolsheviks. But Ilyin spent some time in Russia during the Bolshevik period, and he wasn't afraid of them. They didn't do anything to him either, except exiled him. They were afraid of him because he had gravitas, and he had the truth on his side, and he wasn't afraid of them. Anyway, let's get started. Eurasianism is an ideological and social political current born within the environment of the first wave of Russian immigration. That's the people I'm talking about, the whites. Unified by the concept of Russian culture as a non-European phenomenon, presenting among varied world cultures an original combination of Western and Eastern features. As a consequence, Russian culture belongs to both the East and the West, and at the same time cannot be reduced to either the former nor to the latter. It says neither the former or the latter. This is written by a Russian. They love double negatives, but we know what he means. Let's see here. I highlighted some of this. I'm going to try to keep this brief. Eurasianism is main value. Russian is an original civilization, neither the East or the West. And it is poised for a criticism of the Western civilization, which it calls a Roman-German civilization. The Roman-German civilization has worked out its own system of principles and values and promoted it to the rank of a universal system. Eurasianism rejects this. It is not a universal system. This Roman-German system has been imposed on other people and other cultures by force and by trickery. The Western spiritual and material colonization of the rest of mankind is a negative phenomenon. It's not a good thing. Each people and culture has its own intrinsic right to evolve according to its own logic. Russia is an original civilization. She is called not only to counter the West, fully safeguarding its own traditions, its own road, its own logic, its own development, but also to stand at the vanguard of other people and countries on Earth defending their own freedom as civilizations. Quite a calling. Not a calling of interfering very much, keeping another culture from being exterminated maybe, but not trying to stick your little fingers in there and make people be what you want them to be. Trying to make other people leave them alone. think that's a good thing. The Western civilization has built its own system on the basis of secularization of Western Christianity, Catholicism, and Protestantism, bringing to the fore such values as individualism, egoism, competition, technical progress, consumption, economic exploitation. That's interesting because the Russian Orthodox call themselves the Third Rome, whereas the First Rome was the Roman Church, one of the 7 churches, just one of the 7 churches that you find in the Bible. And there was a schism because at a certain time Rome declared that it had hegemony, that it didn't need to listen to the input of the other churches. They were going to call the shots and everybody else was just going to have to like it. Before that, they had to have a unanimous decision to make any major moves. The Rome decided to change the creed. Major change in the creed too when you think about what they did. I think it concerns the Filaret. Jay Dyer is a good guy to go to for that. He has videos on it in depth. Uses a lot of theological nomenclature, but you can keep Google handy to find out what he's talking about. I'm going to try to be a little dumber than that. I'm making this for average people. This is just so you're not scared of Russian ideology, the ideology of Eurasianism, because you need some yourself, because it's a good thing. You're natural allies. Allies, not alloys, allies. There is no universal pattern of development. The plurality of landscapes on the earth produces a plurality of cultures. Cultures are geolocated. Eskimos developed a culture for a certain reason, their environment. People in the Sahara Desert, similarly. People are affected by their environment. They developed a culture out of it. It's not a bad thing. Just because we have another way of adapting to the culture, the Western technical way, which is fragile systems that are reliant on huge fragile systems which are controlled by them. Not a good idea to get into that. Anyway, no single state has the right to claim to be a standard for all the rest. Every people have its own pattern of development, its own times, and its own rationality, and deserves to be understood and evaluated according to its own internal criteria. That's and there's a heading, the space factor. There's a whole page detailing how cultures are geolocated. Cultures are defined by space, and you should have your own space to do your own thing in your own time. Jeff Spicoli was a political philosopher, whether he knew it or not. Probably didn't. Out of the mouth of babes and stoners. Anyway. I'm just kind of skipping through here and giving you the gist of what's going on here. Okay, this is important. Wealth and prosperity, and a strong state, an efficient economy, a powerful army, and the development of production should be the instruments for achievement of high ideas, not ends in and of themselves. They should be instruments for something. What are you going to have it for? Are you going to have it for just abject materialism? Well, then you end up with weird fads and otherkins, intersectional conflicts in the spectrum of, you know what I'm talking about. You get a bunch of rich, bored people with nothing to do and no values, no morals, nothing to strive for and achieve that's good except their own self-indulgence, and you've got pretty much what Western civilization is. It's not good. It's self-destructing right now. The sense of the state and a nation can be conferred only through the existence of a leading idea. We're talking about ideas here. The Eurasianist called this an ideocracy. Not a democracy, not a kleptocracy, not a cakocracy, not a kikocracy. There's all kinds of ocracies. How about an ideocracy? Going through ideas. There can be bad ideas for ideocracy, but good ideas and noble ideas and high ideals would be ideal. From the Greek idea, kratos, power, ideocracy, Russia is always thought of as the sacred Rus. Have you ever heard that before? Yeah, old school, sacred Rus, Orthodox, as a power fulfilling its distinct historical mission, which we can distill into Eurasianism, but it's not just for Eurasians. The Eurasianist worldview must also be the national idea of the forthcoming Russia, its leading idea. Let me find some more stuff here. One of the original Eurasianists, Ellen Gumilev. I wish they would just spell this in Russian. I could pronounce it better. Oh, he wasn't one of the originals. But anyway, the work of him as development of the Eurasianist thinking. Oh, he was. It was 1912, 1922. He was active. He was profoundly influenced by the book of Kalmuck, a Eurasianist. And it gives all his name, Genghis Khan's aren't the works of. Oh, I made a mistake. See, my highlighter soaks all the way through the page, and I'm reading something that's not really relevant to what you want to hear. Anyway, where am I going with this? I've got farther into it than I expected. This gives you pretty much the history of the movement and how it developed over the last few decades. The last 3 or 4 decades, from the original movement over 100 years ago, and how it relates to the ancient history of going all the way back to the Kievan Rus. I scanned this thing and did a little digging. Oh, here we are. I didn't flip enough pages. If you read Dugin's book, the first one I read was for the Fourth Political Theory, you'll find you got to kind of stay with him. You know, it's a lot of harsh criticism of the West, and it seems to be, well, to some reactionary people that don't really think too deeply and don't know much about the Russian way of thinking, it's, well, they're just criticizing the West and being anti-Western. Well, there's a good reason for that, but it's not just that. Criticism of Western bourgeoisie society from the left-wing social positions was superimposed on the criticism of the same society from the right-wing civilizational positions. Left and right, really, when you cook it down to it, have the same criticisms of your civilizational positions, of what's wrong with America. There is something wrong with it. It's corrupt. It's run by corporations posing as governments. They're just... The criticism comes from the left and the right. The Eurasianist idea about rejecting the West is reinforced by the criticism from both sides. I mean, they make the same criticisms as Eurasianists. There are those in the West itself that disagree with the logic of its development, at least especially recently. The Eurasianists came only at this gradually since the end of the 80s, mid-90s, the idea of fusion of most different and often politically contradictory concepts that deny the normative character of Western civilization. Well, let's slog through that now, shall we? In Russia, when the Soviet Union collapsed, Eurasianists were criticizing the Soviet Union since it began as a political theory as a national idea. It did seem to bring some things together in Russian society, though, for good, which brings forth a lot of these ideas. Collective responsibility and some limits on oligarchy that the state should be doing instead of being in bed with them. I just lost my train of thought. That's horrible. Well, I'm trying to give you a sense of exactly what's going on here. There's a lot of great books that I hope you can get your hands on. I'm going to recommend some. I'm going to put them in the links. I'm going to try to put a lot of links in here. And I'm going to try to find a primer like this, maybe a more up-to-date one online. But I think this is the answer. And I just didn't fall into this yesterday. I've been studying these ideas for years. I wrote a book trying to answer that question about another political theory. My book concerns more the architecture rather than the theory, possible political mechanisms that could be used to support that theory of making any government power, police power, financial power, media power. Media has power. They have to be held accountable at a local level, and there could be a network that'll do that. There could be a network of people who are, they could be elected. I'm not a big fan of democracy these days. Is Joe Biden elected? A lot of people were elected fair and square, but they were corrupt when they got in there. They already made deals before they got in. Now they went to the after party after the event and met the important people that are going to make them or break them. Yeah, you play ball with us, we'll get you in there, buddy. You gotta make some agreements first. Well, let's just go down here in the basement and enjoy ourselves. Now, that's how your politics works. It's pretty ugly. How do you get around that? How do you eliminate that? Well, buy my book. Got some suggestions. There has to be more activity on the part of local people. You don't have to be a full-time political junkie to do it. Just civic organizations in your neighborhood that see what needs to be done. Use parliamentary procedure or what's that, rules of order. Use whatever sort of form you want to find good people and be fair, give everybody a say-so, and then people will elect leaders. They'll naturally follow them anyway. It's an organic thing. People naturally follow people that have a little gravitas, a little integrity, and they know what they're doing. You got to watch, though, because there's some people who are good at faking that, and they just want the power. There's ways of sussing that out. But you got your little local cells where everybody knows everybody. We'll call them cells, too. That just tweaks people because you use communist terminology. We have your little cells here, your local civic society, where we recognize the leaders, and these leaders can be confirmed through an election. And then if you want a national election, you can have a whole plethora of these leaders from all the different cells, and they can run, put them in a lottery. They've all been vetted. They're not going to be put in charge unless they're looked at real close at scrutiny. You got a criminal record? You got anything in your background that we don't like? You used to be in some sort of organizations that are sketchy? Well, we'll give them a chance to explain it to everyone's satisfaction, but it's not going to be buried and hidden and kept from people. And then everybody's just put in a pot and you pull them out of a lottery. It's kind of hard for the corruptors to bribe people. They don't know who's going to win and who's going to be put in. They're not going to be able to groom people for an office if it's going to go according to a lottery, are they? That'll screw things up. You're going to groom 1,000 people for one office. That's just a way to foobar them. There's a million ways to do that. And then I mean, that's just one idea. And also accountability. We have the technology to make people real accountable. You're accountable on your jobs. Most people have cameras on them all the time now. How come politicians don't when they're having their meetings and sussing things out? Yeah, cops got to wear cameras, but then again, they get to control the the product too. If they do something wrong, you don't get to see it. It gets lost. Yeah. But there can be a way to use that technology against the people that presume to be our rulers and tell us what to do. And it's not just your mayor and your dog catcher and whatever. It's also political. It's also media and financial power. That could be applied there too. Banks don't have any checks and balances anymore. They extract tons of money from poor people in fines and fees and little tricks and little ways that they can steal from them. Nobody holds them into account. They used to. They did when I was a kid. They don't anymore. Banks aren't afraid of the government. They bought it a long time ago. You don't have enough local input on your government. Eurasianism is all about that, about your own traditions being respected and not being taken over by huge globalist multinational corporations and gigantic governments that impose the will, not their will, but the will of the corporations that own them. Only remedy for that is Eurasianism. And you're not on your own. There's an international organization. And when some very powerful people are very enthusiastic about it, they're doing it right now. And most American conservatives, because of the PR campaign that's been waged, a multi-million-dollar, maybe even billion-dollar PR campaign that's been waged by 150 private PR groups, most of them very, very powerful and connected under an umbrella of, I wrote an article about that. I wrote a couple articles about that. They're in unclebildy.com in the blogs. But they've been duped by this because of conditioning by television. Weak-minded, emotionalistic thinking conditioned by television and movies. I'm going to help plucky little Ukraine kick that big old bear's butt. No. You're on the wrong side. I want to introduce the people that can help you. They're not going to come over here and help you like they're helping Donbass and the Donetsk and the Lugansk republics. But you can learn from them, and you can learn these principles. You can learn how to organize, how to have an ideology for once. Ideologies aren't evil. Most Americans eschew even having an ideology, but they have one, and it's cartoonish. It's stupid. You babble about freedom and democracy. You don't even know what that means. You don't have it yourself. You think going about throwing money at overthrowing other people and bringing it to them, and you don't even have it yourself. That's interesting. Where's all your freedom and democracy in America? Well, I guess you send it all overseas. It's all, I guess, in Afghanistan and Syria now, right? How'd that work out? You've been tricked. You were taken to the cleaners. Admit it. And quit falling for it. You're falling for it again right now. Anyway, I might put both these videos in here. I don't know. Maybe might have something to offer on the other one. This has just turned into a ramble too. Maybe I'm just not a good teacher. Not a very structured one anyway. I'm waiting for my daughters to get out of their singing class. Uncle Billy's got a plan. He doesn't know if it's going to work or not, but as long as it works, I'm here. I'll be putting some more in. Oh, excuse me. Geopolitical George has a plan. Can't keep that straight. I'm going to call that enough for this and give you some stuff to munch on. And there's going to be a lot of links down here. I'll get you some good ones. Anyway, Geopolitical George, signing out.